Are you considering long-term care options for yourself, a parent, or another loved one? It's important to start these conversations early. If you wait, sudden illness or injury may lead to a hasty decision that may not be in your best interest. Here to tell us more about what's involved in long-term care planning and why it's important is board-certified elder care law attorney Jason Waddell. Good morning, Jason. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me.
Well, first of all, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into elder law.
Well, when I went through school, my focus was in estate and gift tax, planning on doing estate planning, more the traditional work I think most people associate with wills, trusts, and estates. But when moving to Pensacola, what I found was the population already was serviced by tax attorneys, but what it was missing was an elder law segment and needing that type of long-term care planning. And so I just readjusted it because it's a very similar practice model as far as you have an estate and we're just trying to maximize it. This just happens to be more in the long-term care planning rather than the tax side of it.
Well, you mentioned long-term care planning, and this is kind of what we're here to talk about. So tell us what is involved in long-term care planning.
Okay, with the long-term care plan, what we're looking at is where we are today and looking towards the time of death. Of course, we don't know when that time will be, but what we want to do is just try to maximize the estate during this period. We don't want to see any drops in standard of living due to high cost of medical, and we're just trying to create a stable path. And then ultimately what we want to have done at the end when somebody does pass as far as where assets will go.
Well, and this kind of process can be overwhelming and intimidating and maybe even kind of uncomfortable. But why is it important?
Well, it's very important because what we see is the earlier families get involved with planning their estate, the more options they have and the more control they have, because ultimately that's what I find people really want. They want that control, they want to say so, they want to be able to dictate what's going to happen with them, who's going to be managing their money or what their money is used for. And so it's important to get started early and sort of get your voice out there.
Well, and absolutely we know that if you don't have this process in place, it probably could lead to some fights and that kind of stuff, and we want to avoid that. But what age really should you be considering this planning process? Okay,
well, with estate planning, my suggestion is to start early, very early. In your 20s, it's not too early to have your advanced care directives. The two leading cases with living wills were both females in their 20s. So getting those documents going, also with young marriages, getting documents going, because that gets that communication lines open so that when we get to long-term care planning nearing retirement, which varies for different people. Some people are going to retire at 60, some people at 70. So as they're nearing that, that's when we start this conversation about long-term care planning, not just more of the estate planning, who's going to take care of me if there's an accident.
Sure. And like I said, it is an overwhelming process. There's a lot of paperwork and a lot of things to kind of get your head wrapped around. We know that with technology, a lot of things are online now, and it seems like it would be more convenient for someone just to jump on the internet and start, going through the process. But tell us a little bit about some online safety issues to consider and all of that before someone jumps online.
The online side of my world, with the legal world, it can be very troubling. Because I do elder law and I work with people in retirement, this is when they've got their nest egg. They're not in the wage earning years. What they have is what they have. If the document that they get online is not appropriate, it can cost them substantially when it comes to planning, because not all documents are created equal. And we had a change in the statute in 2011 which made power of attorneys, for example, completely different. If it doesn't have the right language, then what we can do is completely different if the document's not done correctly. So while those online documents might work for that young couple I was just talking about, once you're nearing retirement, it's not the same. They need to make sure that it is customized to their situation to make sure it complies with federal and state, because we're going to be dealing probably with more government entities than you are when you're younger.
Well, and I would imagine even if you were younger and submitting it online, I know personally I'm pretty ignorant about that stuff, and I would probably be better off sitting down with an expert and kind of going through the process that way. So definitely it's important to reach out and talk to somebody that knows what they're doing. But tell us a little bit about, you talked about some statutes and changes in that. So tell us a little bit, some changes in tax laws.
Yes, there's been two big areas that have changed over the last few years. The first was the fiscal cliff legislation that came with adjusting what people commonly know as the death tax or the estate tax. When you die, how much tax do you pay? And that got moved up to where it's around $5.4 million now, and the state would have to exceed that before they would owe any taxes. And it's double that if you're married, and you can actually carry forward your previous spouse, your spouse who passed away, tax exemption. So it created a high threshold. Now, the other side of it was the power of attorney statute that I just referenced. What it did was affected a lot more of the middle class, the people that we see here who maybe don't have $10 million or $5 million. For these individuals, they need to plan their estate, and the power of attorney is going to have to specifically authorize what can be done for a certain number of planning options. And if your power of attorney doesn't have that, and it was created after October 2011, then you may have an issue.
Well, if you had some best advice and all of your years of experience and your expertise for somebody that really is wanting to start this process wherever they are in their lives, what would that best advice be?
Well, obviously I'm going to say see a professional. Kind of self-biased there, but aside from that, communication with the family is really crucial. Find out what the family wants. I think a lot of people are surprised when they talk to them. They think, well, this child's clearly going to want to be the one in control. They're Mr. Fortune 500 CEO, when in fact that Fortune 500 CEO cannot get free to be down here as we need them to be. And so we want the other child to act. We need to have the lines of communication open, and getting that ball rolling really can help a lot so that people understand, look, I'm going to have these documents, but that doesn't mean you're in control of me. Here's what we're looking at, is if the day comes and there is a situation, we're prepared for it, and this is what you should expect. The communication is the key. I think you get a lot of the language that you'll need, though, through that meeting with a professional.
That's really good. And of course, as we talked about, it's important for those bigger family units even, to avoid conflict and get those decisions made before there's a stressful moment where it's like, we've got to make this decision now. So thank you so much for coming on the show. But if someone is interested in learning more and they maybe want to meet with you, how can they get in touch with you?
They can call our office at Waddell & Waddell at 434-8500, or go to our website at ourfamilyattorney.com.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.